Hi, it's Tom at FDS, and today we are going to be talking about the UK rules regarding firearms outline type equipment, and I'll also run through a few of the things that UK game organisers have been doing. Obviously this is a area that's up for debate at the moment, and I've got to say thank you to Jang and Drak, Addy and Michelle for putting their video up. And there was some interesting discussion over there in California about some of that stuff. Now, there's a few things to get straight first, that the UK rules are different to the rules for America. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a summary of how the UK law applies to you as a nerfer, which is different from other things, and also how this relates to how we regulate games. Now, by we, I mean the majority of people who participate in Britnerf and in Britnerf sanctioned games, and who also run games in public places. If you're an organiser who doesn't subscribe to any of those things and is not really aware of the law, I suggest that you go and have a little peruse of Britnerf or chat to any of our game organisers, because they are very aware of the law. And also, we've been running games for around 5 years now as a community, and there's a wealth of experience amongst our membership, and people are always happy to share. So if you're thinking of running a war, do come over and have a little look, and do message anybody. I'm sure people will get back to you and help out. There's also a good search function there if you want to go and look at what other people have said or done around starting up games. So first of all, here we can see a typical kind of dark paint job blaster. Obviously this is my Pwn Sniper, and as you can see, it's not really particularly modelled on a particular firearm. It's not a body kit or anything. This is my own custom build, but it is dark colours, and it does have a lot of like metallic effects. It's got some black on it, it's got some camouflage on it, it's got a black barrel, and there's no bright colours on here at all. So that brings us to the first aspect of how this works. And I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to remind everybody what Rule 1 is. Okay, now Rule 1 permeates all of our game stuff, and that is, don't be a dick. Okay, so if you're breaching Rule 1, then you're automatically kind of causing a problem potentially for the community. So just bear that in mind when we have these discussions around all this stuff, is that everything that we talk about kind of relates to Rule 1. So first things first, let's get straight into the nitty-gritty of the UK's regulations and laws. And there are a number of acts dating back to the Firearms Act, and also there's been numerous amendments over the years. And the first thing to remember is what the UK definition of an imitation firearm is. Now, imitation firearms are governed by a set of rules. You can't possess them in public. If you have one in a public place, you are committing an offence. Also, if you misuse one in a threatening or abusive manner, or you wave it at somebody, or you try to hold someone up with it, then you are also committing other offences. First thing we need to consider is we need to consider the UK definition of an imitation firearm. Now, there are two categories of imitation firearms. There's a realistic imitation firearm and an imitation firearm, and the two involve different levels of legislation. So the first one to consider as a nerfer is the imitation firearm, and the definition of an imitation firearm, according to the law itself, is anything that has the appearance of a firearm. Now that means the appearance is quite a big catch-all. This would qualify as an imitation firearm because to an uneducated member of the public, that looks like a firearm. It has a big scope on the top, it's all dark colours, it doesn't really resemble a toy, you know, it's not a Nerf scope, it's not a big shiny bright orange thing, you know, a Gin Urso with all the attachments on is clearly a toy. This is not such a toy. So, imitation firearms, anything that has the appearance of a firearm. Now, in Nerf, obviously we've had a lot of growth in firearms body kits from China and from other places. Lots of people are making them. There's some great aftermarket blasters like the Desert Pigeon, which obviously take their cues from firearms in how they look. Obviously they're not replicas, but they do appear like a firearm. So if you have those things, the law does not state that this colour is anything to do with it. So if you have a bright blue AR-15 outline, then in some circumstances, if somebody complains about it, then it could be considered to be an imitation firearm. Ridiculous as that sounds, the law is written in such a way that it allows space to interpret those things. So just bear in mind that if it could be mistaken for a firearm, then you are definitely breaking the law with regards to carrying it in public. Now, an imitation firearm, you're allowed to possess whatever the hell you like in imitation firearms in your home, so also on private land. So if you're on a closed field, or you're on an airsoft field, or you're in your garden, and you're away from the eyes of the public, you can do whatever the hell you like. And you can pretty much run around with any body kit you want, anything you like. Now, if you're a kid, obviously, it's going to be slightly different for you if you're a minor, because some things like, let's say you've got a Strife, and it's still stock Strife colours, and you've given it a Chris Vector body kit. Now, if you're shooting that in the park with your friends and you're not causing any kind of harassment to anybody in the park and you're not behaving antisocially, it's very unlikely that a member of the public will go, oh god, then there's a 12-year-old kid over there and he's got a gun, even in this country. So you should be pretty safe. But it's worth bearing in mind that if you are a painter of black things and you like painting everything black, bear in mind that once you paint something black, especially if the light is poor or you're sneaking around in bushes, even if you're not a big person, if it's seen from a distance by the member of the public and they think it appears to be a firearm, then they could call the police. And the police have got a very clear statement, which you can find on the internet if you want to go and look it up. It's on askthepolice.com, and they say that any incident involving a firearm that is reported as involving a firearm, they will treat that as if a real firearm is being used, regardless of whether it's an imitation or a realistic imitation. So that covers that. So just bear in mind, public places, no firearms appearance blasters. So public places is anywhere that's open to the general public. So if you're in a park or you're in a playing field or you're right next to a public footpath, even if you're on private land the public can see it, you still should really avoid those things. So just bear that in mind if you're going to go and play. You're better off if you've got a lot of stuff, just take something that's bright, no one's going to care. And also, my big beef with black painting is it's really boring. So be imaginative, don't be tedious. There's so many ways you can paint Nerf. The only piece of black on here is that and the grip. Even this dark stuff here is metallic, I could have just sprayed this all black and it would have worked functionally nearly the same. So show some imagination. Don't paint it nude black. It's just tedious. If you really, really want something that looks like a firearm, then there are lots of sports for you. And I've got no problem with people fitting firearms body kits. But show some imagination. We're Nerf, damn it. Okay, rant over. And now we move on to the second stage of the legislation, which concerns realistic imitation firearms. Now, a realistic imitation firearm is slightly different. The law defines a realistic imitation firearm as something which has an appearance so realistic as to make it, for practical purposes, indistinguishable from a real firearm. So that would mean, for example, if you had a full body kit and you'd really, really worked on the cosmetic appearance to get it so that it was almost exactly to scale, or if you were using, say, a ball blaster, gel ball blaster, that was an exact replica of a firearm, that could be classed as a realistic imitation firearm. However, the judgment call on that is based on how it would appear if misused, and that's the key phrase. So if it was, say, 3/4 scale AR-15, if you have a one of those gel blasters that's kind of not quite the full size, that could still be a realistic imitation firearm under UK law if it was misused. So if you're out at dusk or you're out in a park and you were particularly dressed in full fatigues, possibly, things like that, where you might look a little bit more alarming to members of the public. Remember rule 1? That is kind of where you can go with the realistic imitation firearm. So that brings